You know the specific texture of a Friday evening when your phone doesn't buzz. Not the peaceful quiet of chosen solitude, but the particular weight of air in a room where no one is expecting you anywhere. You scroll through social media and see the casual evidence of other people's lives. The tagged photos, the inside jokes in comment sections, the can't wait to see you messages that aren't meant for you. You close the app. You open it again 3 minutes later as if something might have changed in the molecular structure of your isolation. This is not loneliness as it's typically depicted in movies. No dramatic sobbing into pillows, no montage of rejected phone calls. It's quieter than that. More like a constant background hum you've learned to tune out, except in those moments when you can't. When you're in a crowded place and realize you could disappear and no one would notice for days, maybe weeks. When you rehearse casual conversations in your head because you're so starved for dialogue that you've become both participants. When you catch yourself laughing at something funny and immediately feel the absurdity of laughing alone, which makes it not funny anymore. Something fascinating happens in your neurology when you exist without friendship for extended periods. Your brain doesn't simply register an absence, it recalibrates entirely. The neural pathways associated with social bonding, the ones that light up with oxytocin and dopamine when someone texts you just to say they thought of you, those pathways don't disappear. They repurpose. They redirect their energy toward hypervigilance and threat detection, because at some point, your brain reclassified the social world as a landscape of potential rejection rather than potential connection. The anterior cingulate cortex, the region that processes social pain, begins to fire with the same intensity it would for physical injury. This isn't metaphor. The ache you feel when you see groups of friends laughing together registers in your brain the same way a broken bone would. Your amygdala, already on high alert, starts pattern matching for signs of exclusion so aggressively that you can spot the microsecond when someone's eyes glaze over during a conversation with you. You've become a scholar of subtle dismissals, an expert in reading the room for evidence of your own unwantedness. But here's what makes this particularly cruel. The same neurological changes that make you desperate for connection also make you worse at creating it. Your heightened sensitivity to rejection makes you either withdraw before you can be hurt or overcompensate so awkwardly that you fulfill your own prophecy. You become simultaneously too much and not enough. The loneliness that makes you crave friendship is the same loneliness that convinces you you're not worthy of it. How you got here. Most people assume friendlessness happens suddenly. A geographic move, a betrayal, some clean break that explains everything. Sometimes that's true. But more often, you arrived here through a series of small divergences, so gradual you didn't notice until you looked up, and everyone else was somewhere you weren't. Maybe it started in childhood, not with dramatic bullying necessarily, but with something more insidious. You were the kid who was fine, who got along okay, who was never the target, but also never the chosen one. You were included in group projects, but not birthday parties. You learned early that you could exist in social spaces without belonging to them, and that the exhaustion of constantly trying to bridge that gap was sometimes greater than the exhaustion of just accepting it. Or perhaps you were deeply connected once, but the friendships were built on a foundation of shared circumstance rather than genuine affinity. School friends who scattered after graduation, work friends who stopped calling once you changed jobs, mom friends whose connection dissolved when the kids grew up. You thought these were your people, but they turned out to be your people for now, and now became then faster than you anticipated. Some of you got here through the slow erosion of unreciprocated effort. You were always the one initiating, the one remembering birthdays, the one suggesting plans that got half-hearted responses or enthusiastic agreement that never materialized into actual commitment. You kept trying until one day you stopped, just to see what would happen. Nothing happened. The silence confirmed what you suspected. Your presence in other people's lives was optional, easy to forget, a name they'd scroll past without feeling compelled to reach out. There's another path, too, one that's harder to admit. Sometimes you contributed to your own isolation through patterns you couldn't see clearly until they'd already calcified. Maybe your anxiety made you cancel plans so many times that people stopped inviting you. Maybe your depression flattened your affect so completely that you seemed uninterested in the very connections you were desperate for. Maybe your intensity, the way you wanted to skip small talk and dive straight into what it all means, scared people off. Maybe you were so afraid of being needy that you performed complete self-sufficiency until people believed you didn't need them at all. The developmental path often involves a critical moment where you made a decision without realizing it was a decision. You chose safety over risk. After enough rejections or disappointments or betrayals, your brain did what it's designed to do. It protected you. It's just that the protection looked like withdrawal, like building walls so high that nothing could hurt you, which also meant nothing could reach you. The architecture of adaptation. Here's something profound. You didn't just become someone without friends. You became someone who learned to survive without them. And that survival required constructing an entire psychological infrastructure. You developed what you might call defensive self-sufficiency, a fierce independence that's part genuine capability and part protective mythology. You tell yourself you prefer being alone, that other people are exhausting, that friendship requires compromises you're unwilling to make. Some of this is true. Some of this is the story you need to tell yourself so that your situation feels chosen rather than inflicted. The line between preference and rationalization blurs until you can't quite remember which came first. You've become exceptionally good at certain things. Your inner life has a richness that people with active social lives might never develop. You've read more, thought more, created elaborate worlds in your imagination. You know yourself in ways that people who are constantly surrounded by others might not know. There's no crowd noise drowning out your own voice. You've developed relationships with ideas, with art, with work, with places, with routines that provide a kind of structural stability, if not warmth. You've learned to reframe. Solo dinner at a restaurant isn't sad. It's sophisticated, pleasantly anonymous. Living in your head isn't isolation, it's introspection. Not being invited isn't rejection, it's freedom from obligations. Some of these reframes are healthy. Others are protective fiction you've polished until they shine like truth. But underneath the adaptation, there's also the vigilance. You've developed an almost supernatural ability to read social situations, not so you can navigate them successfully, but so you can anticipate rejection before it arrives. You notice who's checking their phone when you talk, who's scanning the room for someone more interesting, whose laugh sounds just slightly forced when they respond to something you said. This hyper-awareness doesn't make you better at connection. It makes you exhausted by it. You've also created elaborate contingency plans for your own absence. You know exactly how long it would take for someone to notice if something happened to you. Your boss, probably, when you didn't show up for work. Maybe a landlord eventually. This isn't morbid curiosity. It's the mathematical reality of having no daily witnesses to your existence. So you set up systems, automatic bill payments, work check-ins, anything that creates a thread of accountability to the world. Something uncomfortable reveals itself here. The adaptations that help you survive friendlessness also make friendship harder to establish if the opportunity arises. You've become so practiced at self-sufficiency that vulnerability feels like weakness. You've spent so long constructing meaning from solitude that you're not sure how to share space with someone else's chaos. The very skills you develop to protect yourself have become a kind of armor you're not sure how to remove.
The paradox at the center. The central contradiction of living without friends is this: you simultaneously believe you're too much and not enough, too intense, too needy, too strange, too damaged, and also too boring, too ordinary, too forgettable, too absent of whatever quality makes people magnetic. Both things can't be true, yet you hold them as twin certainties. There's another paradox too. You're acutely aware of your isolation while also feeling invisible. You walk through the world seeing evidence everywhere of your own irrelevance. The parties you're not invited to, the group chats you're not part of, the "we should all get together" conversations that somehow never include you. Yet you also feel hypervisible in your loneliness, as if everyone can see the desperation you're trying to hide, the neediness that leaks out despite your best efforts to contain it. You want connection desperately, but also find it terrifying. When someone does show interest, a coworker who invites you to lunch, a neighbor who suggests coffee, your first instinct is often suspicion or panic. What do they want? What will they discover about you that will make them pull away? How long until they realize you're not worth the effort? The opportunity you've been craving becomes a minefield of potential rejection, and sometimes it's easier to politely decline than to risk hope. There's a temporal paradox too. Time moves both too slowly and too fast. The hours stretch endlessly when you have no one to fill them with, no plans to look forward to, no texts to respond to. A weekend can feel like a month, but years pass in a blur because there are no social milestones to mark them, no shared memories to anchor them in your mind. You look back and can't quite distinguish one period from another. It's all the same shape of emptiness. The most painful paradox might be this: the longer you go without friends, the higher the stakes become for any potential friendship, which makes you more likely to sabotage it. You can't just be casual about connection when connection is what you're starving for. Every interaction carries too much weight. You overanalyze, overthink, read too much into every gesture. The desperation you're trying to hide becomes the thing that pushes people away. And you know this, which makes you try even harder to hide it, which makes it even more obvious. How it changes everything. Living without friends doesn't just mean missing out on social activities. It fundamentally alters your relationship to time, to yourself, to the texture of daily existence. Your sense of time warps. Without social anchors, no regular coffee dates, no group dinners, no friends' birthdays to remember.
Time becomes less structured, less real somehow. Days fold into each other. You lose track of whether something happened last week or last month. The pandemic probably intensified this for you, when everyone's isolation suddenly looked like yours, except when it ended for them, it didn't end for you. Your perception of reality shifts, too. Without friends to reflect your experiences back to you, to confirm that yes, that was weird, or no, you're not overreacting, you start to doubt your own interpretations. Did that interaction go badly, or are you being oversensitive? Is your anger justified, or are you being unreasonable? There's no one to check your perceptions against, so you second-guess everything. Your reality becomes unwitnessed, and unwitnessed reality starts to feel less real. You develop a complicated relationship with your own company. Sometimes you genuinely enjoy it, the freedom to do exactly what you want, the lack of compromise, the space to think your own thoughts completely. Other times, you can't stand yourself, can't tolerate another evening with the same mind you've been trapped in for years. You become both your only companion and your least favorite person. Your relationship to public spaces changes too. A coffee shop becomes a place to sit near other humans without the pressure of interacting with them. You're there for the ambient proximity, the background murmur of other people's conversations, the illusion of participation in collective life. You've become skilled at seeming busy, seeming engaged with your phone or laptop, so no one mistakes your presence for an invitation or, worse, pities your solitude. Celebration becomes complicated. Good news, a promotion, an accomplishment, a personal victory lands differently when there's no one to tell. You try to feel excited in private, but excitement needs an audience to feel fully real. So achievements become flatter, less vibrant. You still pursue goals, but the satisfaction is muted by the lack of anyone to share it with. Difficult emotions become even more difficult. When you're sad or anxious or scared, there's no one to talk you down, to offer perspective, to sit with you in the feeling. You have to be your own support system, which means you never get to fully collapse, never get to be the one who's held. You have to be both the person falling apart and the person keeping it together, and that's exhausting. The digital complication. The internet promised to solve this, didn't it? Connection at your fingertips, communities for every interest, the ability to find your people no matter how niche your people might be. And maybe for some people, it delivered on that promise. For you, it mostly made things worse. Because now you have access to a constant stream of evidence of other people's friendships. The group photos, the inside jokes, the casual "love you guys" comments that suggest an ease of affection you can't imagine. You can watch friendship in real time, study it like an anthropologist studying a culture you'll never be part of. It's both a comfort. See, friendship exists, it's possible. And a torment. It exists for everyone but you. Online spaces offered the possibility of connection without the immediate risk of rejection. You can join communities, participate in discussions, interact with people who share your interests. But you've probably noticed that online interaction has a particular emptiness to it. It scratches the itch for engagement without actually satisfying it. You can spend hours in digital conversation and still feel utterly alone afterward. There's also the performance aspect. Everyone online is presenting their best self, their most interesting thoughts, their most photogenic moments. You do it too. But for you, the gap between your online persona and your offline reality feels particularly vast. Online, you might seem engaged, connected, part of various communities. Offline, you're still coming home to an empty apartment where no one has texted you all day. Dating apps added another layer of complexity. They offered the possibility of connection, but turned it into a marketplace where you're constantly being evaluated and found wanting. You might match with someone, have a promising conversation, maybe even meet up once or twice. But friendship, real friendship, rarely develops from these transactional interactions. And the constant rejection, the conversations that fizzle out, the people who ghost, it reinforces every negative belief you have about your own unworthiness. Social media also created a new form of exclusion, being able to see in real time gatherings you weren't invited to. Before, you might not have known about the dinner party or the weekend trip. Now, you can watch it unfold in stories and posts, can see exactly what you're missing, can do the painful math of who was invited and why you weren't among them. What this isn't. This isn't about whether you're a good person or a bad person, interesting or boring, worthy or unworthy. The moral framework doesn't apply here. You aren't friendless as punishment for some failing. This also isn't about fixing you. The self-help industrial complex would like to convince you that you're broken and need their solutions. 7 steps to make friends. How to be more likable. The secret to social success. But you're not a problem to be solved. You're a person, navigating a genuinely difficult situation in a world that's not set up to support people outside of traditional social structures. This isn't about romanticizing isolation either. There's a cultural narrative about the lone genius, the solitary artist, the person who doesn't need others because they're above such mundane concerns. That's mostly mythology. Humans are social creatures. Your pain at being without friends is valid, biological, real. You don't have to pretend it's actually a gift. And this isn't about comparing suffering. Someone will always have it worse. That doesn't make your experience less real or less worthy of acknowledgement. Pain isn't a competition. What it might actually be. Here's a different framework. What if the intensity of your experience, the hyper-awareness, the sensitivity, the depth of your inner life isn't evidence of something wrong with you, but evidence of something profound about how you're wired? You feel the absence of connection so acutely precisely because you have a tremendous capacity for connection. The fact that you notice the subtle shifts in conversation, that you can read the room so well, that you're so aware of social dynamics, that's not a deficit. That's a kind of perceptiveness that, in different circumstances, would be an incredible gift. Your self-sufficiency, even if it was born of necessity, is also a real skill. You've learned to provide for yourself emotionally in ways that many people never develop. You know how to sit with uncomfortable feelings. You know how to create meaning from solitude. You know yourself in ways that people who are never alone might not. Your intensity, the thing that might scare people off, is also the thing that makes you capable of profound depth. You don't do surface level. You can't do casual in the way others seem to. That's not a flaw. That's you operating at a frequency that requires a specific kind of person to match. The pain you feel at your isolation is itself evidence of your capacity for love, for loyalty, for commitment to relationship. You wouldn't hurt this much if you were actually the cold, disconnected person you sometimes fear you are. Something important. The fact that you haven't found your people yet doesn't mean your people don't exist. It means the circumstances that would bring you together haven't aligned. And yes, circumstances matter enormously. Being in the wrong city, in the wrong field, in the wrong stage of life, these things impact connection in ways that have nothing to do with your worthiness. The recognition. If you've read this far, you've probably felt that specific recognition, the one where someone puts words to something you thought only you experienced. That recognition itself is evidence of something crucial. You're not alone in feeling alone. This experience, while isolating, is not unique to you. Millions of people are living some version of what you're living. They're coming home to quiet apartments. They're spending weekends alone. They're watching other people's friendships from the outside. They're wondering what's wrong with them. They're developing the same protective mechanisms, the same adaptations, the same paradoxes. This doesn't fix anything, but it does shift something. The loneliness remains, but the shame around the loneliness, the belief that you're uniquely defective, that can soften. You're not broken. You're navigating a genuinely difficult human experience, and you're doing it with more grace than you probably give yourself credit for. Your situation might change. Someone might move in next door who gets you. You might join something, a class, a group, a community where you finally find your people. Or maybe the change will be slower, less dramatic. A coworker who gradually becomes more than that. An online acquaintance who becomes real. A series of small connections that accumulate into something substantial. Or maybe the situation won't change, at least not in the way you hope. Maybe you'll continue to navigate the world without a traditional friend group. If that's the case, you'll keep adapting, keep building your life around other sources of meaning and connection. It won't be what you wanted, but it will be what you've made. And there's a kind of strength in that, even if it's not the kind of strength you would have chosen. The point is this. Your experience is real, your pain is valid, and your capacity for connection, even if it's currently unexpressed, remains intact. You haven't used it up, you haven't missed your chance. The depth you've developed through this experience, the self-knowledge, the resilience you didn't ask for but developed anyway, these are real qualities that exist in you, regardless of whether anyone is currently around to witness them. You contain multitudes, even if no one is counting them but you. And maybe that's enough for now. Not forever, not ideally, but for now, you are enough, exactly as you are, in all your complicated, contradictory, isolated, yearning humanity.